I'm Madison Harper, 25 years old, and I'm standing in my parents' luxurious home office staring at legal documents that just shattered my world. The mahogany desk between us feels like a courtroom bench, as my father slides a manila folder toward me with the cold precision of a corporate executioner. Inside are contracts demanding 40% of every paycheck I'll ever earn, transforming their $20,000 college contribution into a $93,000 debt trap with compound interest that would make loan sharks blush. The worst part? I apparently signed my financial freedom away years ago. Before we dive into this nightmare, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If this story resonates with you, or you want to hear how I fought back against my own family's financial manipulation, smash that like button and hit subscribe for more incredible true stories. Trust me, what happens next will shock you to your core and change how you view family forever. Growing up in the affluent suburbs of Denver, Colorado, I thought I had won the family lottery. Our sprawling Tudor-style home sat on 2 manicured acres in Cherry Hills Village, where the average house price exceeded $2 million. My father, Richard Harper, was a prominent corporate lawyer whose corner office downtown commanded views of the Rocky Mountains, while my mother, Susan Harper, ruled the local real estate market with an iron fist wrapped in designer gloves. Their combined income easily topped $400,000 annually, and they never let anyone forget it. The Harper family image was everything to my parents. We attended the right charity galas, belonged to the exclusive country club, and our Christmas cards featured professional photographs that could have graced magazine covers. My younger brother Tyler and I were groomed from birth to be extensions of their success story. Every achievement was theirs by proxy, every failure a reflection of their parenting prowess. I excelled academically because that's what Harper children did, graduating valedictorian from our private preparatory academy, with a full ride offer to several prestigious universities. When Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism accepted me into their highly competitive program, my parents threw a celebration dinner that rivaled wedding receptions. The dining room sparkled with crystal glasses and silver platters as extended family and family friends toasted my future. My father stood at the head of our antique dining table, his voice booming with pride as he announced their $20,000 contribution toward my education. The room erupted in applause, and I felt tears streaming down my cheeks at their overwhelming generosity. Looking back, I should have questioned why they needed to handle all the financial paperwork personally. When I offered to manage the student loan applications myself, my mother waved dismissively, her diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light. She insisted that financial matters were too complex for someone my age to understand properly, that their experience in business made them far better equipped to navigate the bureaucratic maze of college funding. My father nodded sagely, explaining that their connections in the legal and financial worlds would secure better terms than any 19-year-old could negotiate independently. The stack of documents they presented for my signature seemed endless. Page after page of legal terminology that might as well have been written in ancient Greek flowed past my eyes as my father explained each section in broad strokes. Trust agreements, educational funding contracts, family investment partnerships, tax benefit structures. His voice carried the authoritative tone he used in courtrooms, and I found myself nodding along without truly comprehending the implications. When he handed me the Mont Blanc pen that had sealed countless corporate deals, I signed my name with the flourish of someone who believed she was entering a partnership built on love and mutual respect. Northwestern exceeded every expectation I'd harbored about college life. The journalism program challenged me intellectually, while Chicago's vibrant cultural scene provided endless inspiration for my writing. I threw myself into investigative reporting with the passion of someone who believed words could change the world. My professors praised my tenacity in pursuing difficult stories, my ability to uncover truth beneath layers of deception and misdirection. The irony of that skill would become apparent much later. Graduating summa cum laude felt like the culmination of everything my family had worked toward. The Chicago Tribune offered me a position covering local government corruption, a dream job that combined my investigative instincts with meaningful public service. My starting salary of $38,000 seemed modest compared to my parents' wealth, but the work fulfilled me in ways that money couldn't measure. I found a decent apartment in Lincoln Park, furnished it with thrift store treasures and hand-me-downs, and settled into the life of a young professional making her mark on the world. For 2 blissful years after graduation, my relationship with my parents remained warm and supportive. They attended my journalism award ceremonies, proudly displaying my framed articles in their home office, and regularly called to check on my career progress. Family dinners remained pleasant affairs filled with discussions about current events, local politics, and my latest investigative pieces. Tyler, pursuing his medical degree at the University of Colorado, joined our conversations via video chat, and our family dynamic seemed healthier than ever. My parents never mentioned repayment terms for their educational contribution during this period. When I occasionally brought up my desire to start paying them back, they brushed aside my concerns with statements about family supporting family without keeping score. My mother would smile warmly and remind me that my success was payment enough, that seeing me flourish in my chosen career brought them more joy than any monetary compensation could provide. My father would nod approvingly, noting that smart investments in family always yielded the best returns in the long run. I should have recognized the warning signs in their overly casual attitude toward such a substantial financial gift. Successful business people like my parents didn't typically make 5-figure investments without clear expectations about returns and timelines. Their insistence on maintaining complete control over the financial arrangements should have triggered alarm bells, especially given my father's legal background and my mother's real estate experience. But love and trust blinded me to the possibility that the 2 people who raised me could be orchestrating an elaborate deception that would trap me in financial servitude for decades to come. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening in late September, just as autumn leaves began painting Chicago in brilliant shades of gold and crimson. My mother's voice carried an unusual formality as she extended what sounded like a royal summons disguised as a family invitation. She insisted that I drive home to Denver the following weekend for a special family dinner, emphasizing that both parents had important matters to discuss regarding my future. The tone suggested this wasn't a request, but rather a command wrapped in maternal sweetness. Saturday evening found me seated in our formal dining room, a space typically reserved for major holidays and important business entertaining. The mahogany table gleamed under the crystal chandelier, set with our finest china and silver service, as if we were hosting foreign dignitaries rather than conducting family business. My parents had dressed for the occasion in their most authoritative attire. My father in his courtroom-worthy navy suit and power tie, my mother in a tailored black dress that screamed executive authority. The atmosphere felt more like a corporate board meeting than a family gathering. After dinner conversation meandered through safe topics, my father methodically working through his standard repertoire of questions about my job performance, career advancement prospects, and financial stability. My mother interjected periodically with observations about my appearance, noting approvingly that I looked healthy despite my modest income, and suggesting that perhaps it was time to consider more ambitious career moves that would provide greater financial security. The undercurrent of judgment in their words should have prepared me for what was coming, but I remained blissfully unaware of the storm gathering around me. As our housekeeper cleared the dessert plates, my father excused himself momentarily before returning with a manila folder that seemed to pulse with ominous energy. He placed it ceremoniously at the center of the table, his hands resting protectively on either side as he began speaking in the measured cadence of a prosecutor presenting evidence to a jury. The $20,000 they had contributed toward my education, he explained with mathematical precision, had been structured as a formal loan agreement with clearly defined terms and conditions that I had agreed to honor through my signature on multiple legal documents. My mother's voice joined the presentation with practiced synchronization, her tone shifting from maternal warmth to business-like efficiency as she outlined their sacrifices on my behalf. They had foregone European vacations, delayed home renovations, and redirected investment opportunities to fund my educational dreams. The emotional manipulation flowed seamlessly into financial calculations as she detailed opportunity costs and lost earnings that I should have considered before accepting their generosity so readily. Opening the folder revealed page after page of legal documents bearing my signature, alongside terms that made my stomach clench with growing dread. The original $20,000 had metastasized through compound interest calculations, administrative fees, and penalty clauses into a debt exceeding $93,000. The repayment schedule demanded 40% of my gross income for the next 15 years, with provisions for asset seizure if payments fell behind schedule. Additional clauses granted my parents oversight authority over my financial decisions, career choices, and major life purchases until the debt was satisfied completely. The mathematical reality hit me like physical blows as my father walked through the payment calculations with the dispassionate efficiency of an accountant foreclosing on a defaulted mortgage. 40% of my current salary meant $15,200 annually, or nearly $1,300 monthly. After taxes, rent, utilities, groceries, transportation, and basic living expenses, I would be left with barely enough money to survive, let alone save for emergencies or plan for any kind of future independence. My attempts to negotiate or question the terms met with increasingly cold responses from both parents. When I pointed out that such payments would leave me unable to afford basic necessities, my mother reminded me that millions of people lived on far less and managed to honor their financial obligations without complaint. My father added that the terms were entirely legal and enforceable, noting that my signature on the documents constituted binding consent to all conditions regardless of my current understanding or approval of those terms. The conversation's tone shifted dramatically as I continued expressing concerns about the arrangement's fairness and sustainability. My father's voice took on the intimidating edge he used against opposing counsel, while my mother's expression hardened into the mask of someone accustomed to closing difficult real estate deals regardless of the human cost involved. They reminded me that family relationships required sacrifice and mutual support, that my reluctance to honor our agreement reflected poorly on the values they had worked so hard to instill throughout my upbringing. Legal action became an explicit threat as the evening progressed, and my resistance to their demands intensified. My father outlined the various enforcement mechanisms available through the court system, describing wage garnishment procedures and asset seizure protocols with the thoroughness of someone who had researched every possible avenue for compelling compliance. The message was unmistakably clear. I could accept their terms voluntarily or have them imposed through judicial intervention. But either way, the debt would be collected according to the contract's specifications. The emotional foundation of our family relationship crumbled in real time as business considerations overwhelmed any pretense of parental love or concern for my well-being. When I appealed to their emotions, reminding them of the pride they had expressed in my career achievements and personal growth, they responded with lectures about personal responsibility and the importance of honoring financial commitments. The parents who had celebrated my journalism success now treated me like a defaulted debtor whose excuses and appeals carried no weight against contractual obligations. The 30-day countdown to my first payment deadline ticked away like a bomb timer, each passing day bringing fresh waves of panic as I attempted to reconcile impossible mathematics with basic survival needs. $15,200 annually represented more than 40% of my pre-tax income, leaving me with roughly $22,800 to cover all living expenses, taxes, and any hope of financial stability. After federal and state taxes claimed their portion, my available funds shrank to barely $18,000 for the entire year, or $1,500 monthly to cover rent, utilities, food, transportation, insurance, clothing, medical expenses, and every other necessity of modern life. My comfortable Lincoln Park apartment became an unaffordable luxury overnight, as I calculated that my $800 monthly rent alone would consume more than half my remaining income after the family payment. Desperate apartment hunting led me to increasingly desperate neighborhoods, until I finally found a basement studio in a converted house on Chicago's far south side. The space barely qualified as habitable. Concrete walls that wept moisture during rainstorms, a single window that provided minimal natural light, and plumbing that functioned sporadically at best. The $450 monthly rent represented the absolute cheapest housing I could locate without moving into areas where personal safety became a legitimate concern. Grocery shopping transformed from a routine task into a complex mathematical exercise requiring careful calculation of every purchase to maximize nutritional value while minimizing cost. Ramen noodles, canned vegetables, discount bread, and generic peanut butter became dietary staples as I learned to stretch $25 weekly across all food needs. Restaurant meals disappeared entirely from my budget, along with coffee shop visits, social outings involving any expenditure, and even basic conveniences like household cleaning supplies that weren't absolutely essential for survival. The physical toll of financial stress manifested rapidly through weight loss, chronic fatigue, and a persistent anxiety that made concentration increasingly difficult. Sleep became elusive as my mind constantly cycled through payment calculations, budget adjustments, and increasingly desperate schemes for generating additional income. My already modest wardrobe developed holes and stains that I couldn't afford to replace, leading to growing embarrassment about my professional appearance during important interviews and workplace meetings. Work performance suffered dramatically as hunger, exhaustion, and stress undermined my ability to think clearly and pursue investigative leads with my former intensity. Colleagues began commenting on my distracted demeanor and declining output, while my supervisor expressed concern about missing deadlines and reduced story quality. The irony of investigating financial corruption while being financially destroyed by my own family created a cognitive dissonance that made every workday feel like emotional torture. Social isolation compounded the financial hardship as friends gradually stopped inviting me to activities that required spending money. Birthday dinners, weekend outings, holiday celebrations, and casual after-work gatherings became impossible luxuries that reminded me how thoroughly my parents had severed my connections to normal young adult life. Relationships began deteriorating as I repeatedly declined invitations without being able to explain the true reasons behind my sudden financial constraints. Monthly phone calls from my parents took on the character of debt collection conversations, with detailed inquiries about my employment status, salary level, and expense management strategies. They demanded copies of pay stubs and bank statements to verify my income and ensure compliance with payment schedules, treating me like a high-risk borrower requiring constant monitoring rather than their daughter navigating an impossible financial situation. Any missed or late payments triggered immediate contact with threats about escalating enforcement measures. The psychological manipulation intensified as my parents alternated between expressions of disappointment about my financial irresponsibility and reminders about their sacrifices to provide educational opportunities that I was now failing to appreciate properly. Phone conversations became exercises in emotional warfare, with my mother's voice dripping with martyred sadness as she described the hardships they endured to help finance my dreams, while my father maintained the cold professionalism of a collections attorney pursuing maximum recovery regardless of personal consequences. My younger brother Tyler initially supported our parents' position, echoing their arguments about personal responsibility and family obligations during occasional phone conversations. His perspective began shifting gradually as he witnessed my visible deterioration during holiday visits home, but initial attempts to advocate on my behalf met with stern reminders about family loyalty and the importance of supporting parental authority in all circumstances. The breaking point arrived during a particularly brutal Chicago winter, when the combination of inadequate nutrition, chronic stress, and overwork finally overwhelmed my physical reserves completely. Fainting in the newsroom during a staff meeting led to an emergency room visit that I couldn't afford, where medical staff diagnosed severe malnutrition and recommended immediate dietary improvements that my budget made impossible to implement. The hospital social workers' questions about my living situation and financial stability forced me to confront the reality that my parents' demands had reduced me to poverty-level existence despite maintaining full-time professional employment. Medical bills from the emergency room visit added another layer of financial impossibility to my already unsustainable situation, with payment demands that exceeded my monthly grocery budget. The stress of juggling medical debt alongside family payments while maintaining basic survival created a cascade of health problems that further undermined my ability to perform effectively at work, threatening the job that represented my only source of income and hope for eventual financial stability. The emergency room incident served as a catalyst for deeper investigation into my family's financial practices, transforming my journalistic instincts from professional tools into weapons of personal survival. Late nights in the Chicago Tribune archives became research expeditions as I methodically examined public records, court filings, and business registrations associated with Harper family enterprises throughout the past 2 decades. What I discovered painted a disturbing picture of systematic financial exploitation that extended far beyond my own situation. My investigation began with property records and business licenses, tracing the complex web of limited liability companies, trust arrangements, and partnership agreements that my parents had constructed around their various income streams. Real estate transactions revealed patterns of family members selling properties to Harper entities at below-market prices, only to have those same properties resold months later for substantial profits that never seemed to benefit the original family sellers. Legal documents showed repeated instances of relatives signing complex agreements that appeared beneficial initially, but contained hidden clauses that transferred long-term control to my parents. Tyler's situation provided the most immediate and shocking revelation when I finally pressed him for details about his medical school financing during a holiday phone conversation. My brother initially resisted discussing the topic, but persistent questioning eventually broke through his reluctance to acknowledge the uncomfortable parallels between our circumstances. His medical education debt had been structured through similar family loan arrangements that promise favorable terms and flexible repayment schedules, but the actual documentation contained compound interest calculations and penalty clauses that would keep him financially bound to our parents well into his 40s. The conversation with Tyler revealed layers of psychological manipulation that I had somehow missed during my own entanglement in their financial web. Our parents had convinced him that accepting their loan arrangements demonstrated family loyalty and wisdom, while pursuing traditional student loans would reflect poorly on family unity and financial planning capabilities. They had positioned themselves as generous benefactors offering better terms than commercial lenders, when in reality their contracts contained provisions that no legitimate financial institution would dare include in standard loan documentation. Cousin Emma's story emerged through careful family network investigation, beginning with casual social media messages that gradually evolved into detailed phone conversations about her experiences 15 years earlier. Emma had been the first family member to attend college, and our parents had eagerly offered financial support that seemed incredibly generous at the time. Her undergraduate education in environmental science had been funded through Harper family loans with terms that initially appeared reasonable, but post-graduation revelations showed contract modifications and interest calculations that trapped her in perpetual debt. Emma's decade and a half of payments to our parents had yielded valuable insights into their enforcement mechanisms and psychological pressure tactics. She described regular family gatherings where her payment status became the subject of public discussion, with my parents expressing concern about her financial management skills while positioning themselves as patient creditors who deserved recognition for their flexibility and understanding. Social pressure within the extended family had prevented her from seeking legal assistance or discussing the arrangement's true terms with outsiders who might have recognized its predatory nature. The pattern extended beyond immediate family members to include family friends, business associates, and even employees who had accepted Harper family financial assistance for various personal or professional needs. Each arrangement followed similar structures. Generous initial terms that attracted grateful acceptance, followed by contract revelations that transferred substantial long-term control to my parents while generating steady income streams that funded their luxurious lifestyle. My first consultation with attorney Rebecca Chin provided professional confirmation of what my investigative instincts had already suspected. The contracts governing my educational loans violated multiple consumer protection statutes and predatory lending regulations. Rebecca's preliminary analysis identified interest rates that exceeded legal maximums, penalty clauses that constituted unconscionable terms, and disclosure violations that could potentially void the entire agreement. Her expertise in family financial abuse cases provided a framework for understanding how sophisticated perpetrators used emotional manipulation alongside legal complexity to trap victims in exploitative arrangements. Gathering evidence required careful planning to avoid alerting my parents to my investigation, while documenting their financial practices thoroughly enough to support potential legal action. Hidden recording devices captured phone conversations where they openly discussed their enforcement strategies and future plans for expanding their family lending operations. Document copying sessions during holiday visits home yielded contracts and correspondence that revealed the true scope of their predatory activities across multiple family relationships. My parents' retaliation began almost immediately after they sensed my growing resistance to their authority and payment demands. Credit cards that I had forgotten were connected to family accounts suddenly disappeared, leaving me without emergency financial resources during particularly challenging months. Cell phone service terminations forced me to rely on prepaid plans that I could barely afford, while subtle social media campaigns began portraying me as an ungrateful daughter who refused to honor family obligations despite receiving substantial educational support. The discovery of online forums dedicated to family financial abuse survivors provided both emotional support and practical guidance from others who had navigated similar situations successfully. These virtual communities shared strategies for evidence gathering, legal resource recommendations, and psychological techniques for maintaining sanity, while confronting family members who used financial control as emotional weapons. The realization that my situation reflected widespread patterns of family exploitation, rather than isolated personal circumstances, provided crucial perspective for developing effective resistance strategies. Connection with other victims through online networks revealed the sophisticated nature of family financial predators and the resources available for fighting back against their manipulative practices. Support group participants shared stories that contained familiar elements. Generous initial offers that created emotional debt alongside financial obligation, contract terms that became increasingly onerous over time, and psychological pressure campaigns designed to prevent victims from seeking outside assistance or legal intervention. Rebecca Chen's legal analysis provided the foundation for a comprehensive counterattack against my parents' financial exploitation, beginning with detailed documentation of contract violations that could support both civil litigation and potential criminal referrals for predatory lending practices. Her expertise in family financial abuse cases revealed the full scope of legal protections available to victims of sophisticated manipulation schemes, including consumer protection statutes that imposed severe penalties for the specific violations contained within my educational loan documentation. The legal strategy session revealed multiple avenues for challenging the enforceability of contracts signed under conditions of inadequate disclosure, emotional duress, and deliberate misrepresentation of terms and consequences. Rebecca outlined how sophisticated predators used family relationships to bypass consumer protection safeguards, creating the appearance of legitimate business arrangements while structuring deals that would be immediately recognized as predatory if offered by commercial lenders. My parents' legal backgrounds actually worked against them in this context, as their professional knowledge made claims of innocent mistake or unintentional violation completely untenable. Evidence collection intensified as we prepared formal legal challenges to the contract's validity and enforceability. Hidden recording devices captured increasingly desperate phone conversations where my parents threatened wage garnishment, credit destruction, and complete family excommunication if I continued resisting their payment demands. Their own words provided powerful evidence of the coercive tactics they employed to maintain financial control over family members who questioned their authority or attempted to seek outside assistance. The confrontation scene in my parents' home office carried the weight of years of accumulated resentment and newfound legal knowledge, as I presented Rebecca's preliminary findings and demanded immediate contract cancellation. My father's initial response reflected his legal training. Calm denials of wrongdoing followed by technical arguments about contract interpretation and enforcement procedures. However, as I outlined specific statutory violations and potential criminal liability, his composure began cracking to reveal the calculating predator beneath his professional facade. My mother's reaction proved more emotionally explosive, but equally revealing of their true motivations and methods. Her tearful performance about family loyalty and parental sacrifice dissolved quickly when confronted with recorded evidence of their enforcement strategies and financial calculations that treated family relationships as profit centers. The victim routine that had proven effective for decades lost its power when faced with documented proof of their systematic exploitation of vulnerable family members. The hiring of a private investigator to monitor my activities represented a significant escalation in their retaliation campaign, demonstrating the lengths they were willing to pursue in maintaining financial control over my life. Professional surveillance teams followed me to work, recorded my social activities, and attempted to document evidence that could be used to undermine my credibility or employment status. The psychological pressure of constant observation added another layer of stress to an already overwhelming situation, but also provided additional evidence of their abusive tactics. Workplace sabotage attempts began shortly after our confrontation, with mysterious phone calls to my editor questioning my professional integrity and suggesting that personal financial problems might be compromising my judgment as an investigative journalist. My parents' connections within Denver's professional community enabled them to spread rumors about my reliability and work quality, attempting to destroy my career prospects while portraying themselves as concerned parents worried about their daughter's mental health and financial decision-making capabilities. Tyler's awakening to our parents' manipulation tactics proved crucial for building a stronger case against their financial predation schemes. My brother's medical school contracts contained similar violations and exploitative terms, providing additional evidence of systematic predatory practices rather than isolated incidents of poor judgment. His willingness to share documentation and provide testimony about their psychological manipulation methods strengthened our legal position significantly, while also offering him a path toward freedom from their financial control. The secret alliance with Tyler required careful coordination to avoid alerting our parents to his cooperation, while gathering maximum evidence about their methods and motivations. Recorded family conversations revealed their long-term planning strategies for maintaining financial control over both children well into our professional careers, treating our future earnings as guaranteed income streams that would fund their retirement lifestyle and ongoing business investments. Rebecca's legal filing marked the formal beginning of our counteroffensive against decades of family financial abuse, with comprehensive documentation of statutory violations, evidence of psychological manipulation, and demands for full contract nullification plus damages for the financial and emotional harm caused by their predatory practices. The lawsuit's public filing meant that their exploitation activities would become part of the official court record, exposing their methods to scrutiny from other potential victims and regulatory authorities. The initial court filings included requests for temporary restraining orders preventing further harassment or intimidation, recognition that their enforcement activities constituted actionable abuse under multiple consumer protection statutes, and demands for immediate cessation of all collection activities, pending resolution of the contract validity questions. Rebecca's experience with similar cases enabled her to anticipate their likely defense strategies and prepare comprehensive rebuttals to arguments about family autonomy and contractual rights. Media exposure began when my journalism colleagues learned about my family's predatory lending practices through court filings and recognized the story's broader implications for consumer protection and family financial abuse awareness. My editor at the Chicago Tribune initially expressed concern about potential conflicts of interest, but Rebecca's documentation of widespread illegal practices convinced him that public exposure served important educational purposes for readers who might be vulnerable to similar exploitation by family members or trusted associates. The investigative piece that emerged from my personal experience revealed a disturbing pattern of family financial predation that extended far beyond individual cases, to represent a broader social problem affecting thousands of families across the country. Interview subjects included financial counselors, legal experts, and other victims who shared remarkably similar stories about trusted relatives who used emotional manipulation to structure exploitative financial arrangements, disguised as generous family assistance programs. Public humiliation proved particularly devastating for my parents, whose social standing within Denver's affluent community depended heavily on maintaining appearances of family harmony and financial success. Country club members, charity board associates, and professional colleagues began questioning their integrity as details about their predatory practices spread through overlapping social networks. The reputation they had spent decades building crumbled rapidly when confronted with documented evidence of their exploitation activities. Their intimidation campaign escalated dramatically in response to the media attention, with threatening letters delivered to my workplace and apartment warning about the consequences of continued public discussion of family financial matters. Harassment calls at all hours attempted to disrupt my sleep and work schedule, while social media attacks portrayed me as an ungrateful daughter attempting to destroy her family's reputation to avoid honoring legitimate financial obligations. Community response exceeded our expectations as other families came forward with similar stories about Harper family financial arrangements that had trapped them in long-term exploitation relationships. Former employees revealed workplace loan programs with predatory terms, while family friends described investment opportunities that generated substantial returns for my parents while leaving participants with significant losses. The pattern of sophisticated financial manipulation extended far beyond immediate family members to encompass anyone who trusted their expertise and accepted their assistance. Tyler's public support represented a crucial turning point in our battle against parental financial control, as his medical profession and community standing provided credibility that undermined my parents' attempts to portray me as an isolated malcontent with personal grievances. His willingness to discuss his own exploitation publicly despite potential professional consequences demonstrated the courage required to confront family financial predators regardless of personal costs. Evidence expansion through community investigations revealed additional illegal activities including tax evasion schemes, fraudulent business practices, and regulatory violations that could support criminal prosecutions beyond civil contract disputes. Financial records obtained through discovery procedures showed sophisticated money laundering operations designed to hide income sources and avoid tax obligations while maintaining appearances of legitimate business success. My parents' desperation became evident as they attempted to negotiate partial settlement agreements that would reduce my payment obligations while preserving their financial control mechanisms. Settlement offers included debt forgiveness proposals that seemed generous on the surface, but contained continued oversight provisions and penalty clauses that would maintain their authority over my financial decisions indefinitely. Rebecca advised against any settlement that failed to completely nullify their contracts and provide full compensation for damages already suffered. The court's preliminary rulings validated our legal strategy by finding sufficient evidence of consumer protection violations to warrant full evidentiary hearings on contract validity and enforceability. Judicial recognition that family relationships did not exempt financial arrangements from predatory lending regulations provided crucial precedent for other victims who might be reluctant to challenge relatives who had exploited their trust and financial vulnerability. Family destruction became inevitable as the legal battle revealed the true nature of relationships that had been built on financial control rather than genuine emotional connections. Extended family members were forced to choose sides between supporting documented victims of financial abuse or maintaining loyalty to relatives whose predatory practices had been exposed through court proceedings. The social costs of confronting family financial predators extended far beyond individual cases to affect entire family networks and community relationships. The psychological toll of sustained family warfare required professional counseling support to maintain emotional stability, while pursuing legal remedies against relatives who had shaped my entire understanding of family relationships. Therapy sessions focused on separating legitimate family obligations from exploitative manipulation, developing boundaries that protected against future financial abuse, and rebuilding self-worth after years of psychological conditioning designed to maintain victim compliance with predatory demands. Financial investigation through court-ordered discovery procedures revealed the shocking truth about my parents' actual financial situation. Their luxurious lifestyle was built entirely on debt and exploitation income rather than the legitimate business success they had portrayed to family and community members. Asset searches showed mortgages, credit lines, and investment loans that far exceeded their actual earning capacity, creating a house of cards that required constant victim payments to prevent complete financial collapse. The historical scope of their financial abuse became apparent through banking records and tax documents that showed decades of systematic exploitation dating back to their early marriage, when they began using family relationships as profit centers. Evidence included loans to elderly relatives with compound interest rates that consumed entire inheritances, business partnerships with friends that resulted in asset transfers without compensation, and investment schemes that generated substantial returns exclusively for Harper family accounts while leaving participants with significant losses. Discovery of my deceased grandmother's inheritance provided the most emotionally devastating revelation about their predatory practices. Legal documents showed that grandmother Elizabeth had left substantial bequests for both Tyler and me to support our educational goals. But my parents had structured the inheritance through trust arrangements that allowed them to redirect the funds for their own purposes, while maintaining the fiction that their financial support represented personal sacrifice rather than theft of our legitimate inheritance. The inheritance theft represented not just financial fraud, but emotional manipulation of the cruelest sort, as my parents had repeatedly reminded us about their generous educational support, while knowing that the funds came from our grandmother's intended gifts rather than their own resources. Years of guilt about accepting family financial assistance evaporated when I realized that we were simply receiving portions of money that rightfully belonged to us already. Tyler's sacrifice in supporting our legal challenge despite potential financial consequences demonstrated remarkable courage given his vulnerable position, as someone still completing medical training with limited income sources. His decision to risk his career prospects and family relationships to expose our parents' predatory practices provided crucial testimony about their psychological manipulation methods and long-term control strategies. Community impact expanded dramatically when the local Denver newspaper picked up the story and began investigating other potential victims within their circulation area. Reporter Sarah Mitchell's series about family financial abuse revealed dozens of similar cases involving trusted relatives who used emotional manipulation to structure exploitative arrangements that trapped victims in long-term financial servitude, while enriching perpetrators at their expense. Professional consequences began affecting my father's law firm when partners launched internal investigations into potential ethics violations and client relationship problems that could result from his personal predatory practices. Bar association inquiries threatened his professional license while former clients began questioning whether their legal representation had been compromised by his willingness to engage in exploitative behavior within his own family relationships. My mother's psychological breakdown and subsequent hospitalization revealed the stress that years of maintaining elaborate deception had imposed on her mental health. Medical professionals diagnosed severe anxiety disorders and depression that appeared linked to the constant pressure of managing complex exploitation schemes while maintaining social appearances of family success and harmony. The moral dilemma about pursuing maximum legal consequences against parents who were clearly suffering psychological consequences forced me to confront difficult questions about justice, revenge, and family relationships. Rebecca counseled that effective deterrence required holding predators accountable regardless of their emotional state, as lenient treatment would only enable continued exploitation of other vulnerable family members and community victims. Legal victory came through a comprehensive court ruling that found the educational loan contracts invalid, due to multiple consumer protection violations, inadequate disclosure of terms, and evidence of deliberate misrepresentation designed to trap victims in exploitative arrangements. The judge's written opinion provided detailed analysis of family financial abuse dynamics and established important precedent for protecting other victims of similar exploitation schemes. Extended family support emerged gradually as relatives who had been afraid to challenge my parents' authority found courage through our legal success and media exposure of their predatory practices. Aunts, uncles, and cousins began sharing their own stories of financial exploitation, while offering emotional and practical support for our ongoing recovery efforts. The realization that their influence had been built on fear rather than respect became apparent, as family members felt safe to express their true feelings about years of financial manipulation. Financial recovery prospects improved dramatically when court orders required my parents to reimburse all payments I had made under the invalid contracts plus interest and penalties for the illegal collection activities they had pursued. Additional damage awards covered legal fees, medical expenses, and compensation for the emotional distress caused by their systematic financial abuse over multiple years. Court-ordered financial recovery exceeded our expectations when the judge imposed significant penalty damages beyond simple restitution. Recognizing that my parents' sophisticated knowledge of legal and financial systems made their predatory practices particularly egregious and deserving of deterrent sanctions. The final judgment required payment of all legal fees, medical expenses, lost income, and additional damages that totaled nearly twice the amount they had illegally extracted through their exploitative contracts. Career breakthrough opportunities emerged directly from my experience with family financial abuse, when major news organizations recognized the broader social importance of my story and began offering positions that would allow me to specialize in investigating financial exploitation cases. The Chicago Tribune promoted me to their investigative team, focusing on consumer protection issues, while national publications expressed interest in my expertise regarding family financial abuse and predatory lending practices. Tyler's freedom from parental financial control enabled him to complete medical training without the psychological burden of exploitative debt arrangements, while his willingness to speak publicly about family financial abuse opened new career opportunities in medical ethics and patient advocacy work. His experience provided valuable insights for healthcare professionals dealing with patients whose medical decisions were being influenced by family financial manipulation or controlling relatives. Community recognition of their predatory practices permanently destroyed my parents' social standing and business relationships throughout Denver's professional and social networks. Country club memberships were quietly terminated, charity board positions disappeared, and longtime friends began avoiding social contact as the scope of their exploitation activities became widely known through court proceedings and media coverage. Criminal charges followed civil proceedings when prosecutors determined that the systematic nature of my parents' financial abuse, combined with evidence of tax evasion and fraudulent business practices, warranted felony prosecutions that could result in significant prison sentences. The criminal cases attracted additional victims who had been afraid to come forward previously, but found courage through successful civil litigation and supportive community response. My transformation from victim to advocate began with speaking engagements at legal conferences and consumer protection seminars where my experience provided valuable education for attorneys, financial counselors, and social workers who encounter family financial abuse cases in their professional practice. The combination of personal experience and investigative journalism skills made me an effective spokesperson for recognizing and addressing family financial exploitation. Professional recognition came through awards from journalism organizations and consumer protection groups that recognized the courage required to expose family financial abuse despite personal costs and social pressures. National speaking opportunities allowed me to reach broader audiences with education about recognizing and preventing family financial exploitation before it trapped other victims in similar circumstances. New relationships developed gradually as I learned to trust people whose affection and support weren't contingent on financial control or psychological manipulation. Romantic partnerships required careful navigation of trust issues and boundary setting, but therapy and support groups provided tools for building healthy relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency or emotional control. Healing processes involved extensive therapy to address the psychological damage caused by years of financial manipulation and emotional abuse disguised as family concern and support. Support groups for family financial abuse survivors provided community with others who understood the unique challenges of confronting predatory relatives while rebuilding damaged self-worth and financial independence. The final legal confrontation in family court mediation provided an opportunity to express years of accumulated anger and disappointment, while asserting complete independence from their ongoing attempts to maintain psychological control through guilt, manipulation, and threatened consequences. Mediation sessions revealed their continued inability to acknowledge responsibility for the harm they had caused or demonstrate genuine remorse for their predatory behavior. Establishing boundaries required legal documentation through restraining orders and no-contact agreements that prevented further harassment, while protecting my privacy and professional reputation from ongoing retaliation attempts. Clear legal boundaries provided emotional safety that enabled focus on recovery and advocacy work without constant fear of renewed financial or psychological attacks from family members who refused to accept accountability for their actions. Complete victory in both civil and criminal proceedings established important legal precedent for protecting other victims of family financial abuse, while providing full financial recovery and emotional vindication for years of systematic exploitation. The criminal convictions resulted in prison sentences that removed my parents' ability to continue victimizing other family members or community associates, while civil damages provided resources for rebuilding my financial foundation and supporting advocacy work. Career transformation into a leading voice against family financial abuse opened opportunities to educate professionals, policymakers, and potential victims about recognizing and addressing sophisticated exploitation schemes that use emotional manipulation to bypass consumer protection safeguards. Speaking engagements, published articles, and media interviews reached millions of people with crucial information about protecting themselves and their loved ones from predatory family members. Tyler's successful completion of medical training and establishment of an independent practice focused on medical ethics and patient advocacy demonstrated the possibility of breaking free from family financial control, while building meaningful professional relationships based on mutual respect rather than exploitative dependency. His courage in confronting parental manipulation inspired other family members to seek freedom from similar exploitation arrangements. Community impact extended far beyond individual cases, as new local legislation strengthened protections against predatory family lending and created resources for victims who needed legal assistance to challenge exploitative contracts. The Harper family case became a model for recognizing and addressing family financial abuse while educating community members about the warning signs of sophisticated manipulation schemes. Personal healing involved rebuilding relationships with extended family members who had been afraid to challenge my parents' authority, but offered genuine support once their predatory practices were exposed and legally addressed. These renewed family connections provided emotional foundation for moving forward, while maintaining appropriate boundaries against future manipulation attempts. The forgiveness journey required distinguishing between excusing harmful behavior and releasing anger's destructive hold on my emotional well-being and future relationships. Therapy helped me understand that forgiveness meant choosing not to let their actions continue defining my life, rather than minimizing the harm they caused or welcoming them back into positions where they could inflict additional damage. Establishing a nonprofit organization for financial abuse survivors created lasting institutional support for other victims, while channeling my experience into productive advocacy work that could prevent similar exploitation of vulnerable family members. The organization provides legal resources, emotional support, and educational materials that help victims recognize abuse patterns and develop strategies for achieving freedom and recovery. Professional fulfillment came through investigative journalism work that exposed other sophisticated predatory schemes while educating readers about protecting themselves and their families from financial exploitation. The combination of personal experience and professional expertise provided unique perspectives that enhanced my effectiveness as both investigator and advocate for consumer protection improvements. Life lessons from confronting family financial abuse emphasize that true family relationships are built on love, respect, and mutual support rather than financial control, psychological manipulation, or obligation based on shared genetics. The people who genuinely care about your well-being will support your independence and success rather than attempting to trap you in exploitative arrangements that serve their interests at your expense. The most important realization was understanding that real wealth consists of freedom from toxic manipulation, the ability to make independent decisions about your life and finances, and relationships based on genuine affection rather than financial dependency or emotional control. No amount of money is worth sacrificing your autonomy, self-respect, or mental health to predatory relatives who view family relationships as profit opportunities. Looking back, I realized that my parents' greatest mistake was underestimating my resilience, investigative skills, and willingness to fight for justice regardless of personal costs or family pressure. Their sophisticated manipulation schemes ultimately collapsed because they forgot that the daughter they raised to be strong, independent, and uncompromising in pursuit of truth would eventually turn those same qualities against their exploitation when she finally understood what they had done. Today I encourage anyone experiencing family financial abuse to remember that you deserve better than exploitation disguised as love, that professional help is available for challenging predatory relatives regardless of their sophistication or social standing, and that breaking free from toxic family financial control is possible with proper support and determination. Your worth isn't measured by your willingness to accept abuse from people who claim to care about you while systematically destroying your financial independence and emotional well-being. What would you do if you discovered that your own family members were using your love and trust to trap you in financial servitude? Have you experienced similar manipulation from relatives who claim to be helping while actually exploiting your vulnerability? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Hit that like button if this story opened your eyes to the realities of family financial abuse, and subscribe for more incredible true stories about overcoming toxic relationships and building genuine independence. Remember to share this video with anyone who might be struggling with controlling or manipulative family members, because knowledge truly is power when it comes to protecting yourself from sophisticated predators who hide behind family relationships. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to demand the respect and independence that every person deserves, especially from those who claim to love them most.